Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we are talking about the Ernest movies. So for those of you who don't know, Ernest is a kid's character played by actor Jim Varney. I originally thought that the Ernest character came from a TV series, but I did a little bit of research and apparently it actually came from a series of commercials. And those commercials were so popular that the character received his own movie and then also a TV series and many other movies after that. The general formula for the commercials was that Ernest would speak directly into the camera, and the camera would be a neighbor called Vern, and so each commercial would just be talking about whatever product that Ernest was selling at the time, like Pepsi or just anything. So the first movie that came out was Ernest Goes to Camp, and after that was released, the TV series came out for one season, and after that, 8 movies followed. So there is certainly a big Ernest legacy. I think he is just for the most part like a popular thing in America. I am very uncertain about how popular he is in other countries. Like, I'm from Australia and I've hardly ever heard of Ernest. Prior to this, I've only ever seen 1 or 2 of his movies at the most, which was Ernest Goes to School, and I might have seen Ernest Scared Stupid, but I barely even remember it. I can't remember why exactly, but those movies got in my head recently, so I figured I'd just go through them all and see which ones hold up, which ones don't, and if this series is like something worth watching and going through at all. So we're going to go through these in chronological order. That's how I watched them, and kind of see how the Ernest series progresses throughout the years. Because the first one was in 1987 and the last one was 1998, so 8 movies over the course of 11-ish years. I'm also going to be ranking these as I go in terms of which ones I like the most, and also which ones I personally consider are worth watching. So let's just start. First movie, Ernest Goes to Camp, 1987. So this one they played very, very safe, considering this was his first venture into either film or television. As far as I'm aware, up to this point, he'd only ever done commercials, so they wanted this to be successful. The premise is something you've heard a million times before, which is there is a children's camp on some land that's owned by a native Indian, and there's a big bad business company that wants to buy up the land. So Ernest is a camp counselor, and he basically, at the end of the day, takes it upon himself to stop the big bad businessmen from buying up the land and using it to mine. It was some particular resource. I can't remember what it was.
And I'm prepared to offer you a 10% royalty on all the petricite that we can mine out of the Kankakee area. 10%.
So yeah, it's like saving the kids' camp. It's tried and true, I guess. The jokes in this movie are very isolated and they're disconnected. Like, there's not much setup and payoff for any of the gags, really. This is very early days in the Ernest series, so they don't really have any idea what they're doing. It kind of just feels like they're testing the waters with what they can do exactly with the Ernest character. This is probably one of the strangest Ernest movies. At one point, there's even a musical number where Ernest is like singing some song at his low point. I can't remember what the song's called.
I'm awfully glad it's raining, 'cause no one sees your teardrops when it pours.
It was really weird when Ernest just started like singing. It's a lot more violent than I thought an Ernest movie would be. And this kind of goes across all the Ernest movies, actually. They're more, I don't know if it's just because it's America or what, but they're all more violent than I expect them to be, considering that they're kids' movies. We'll get into that later on down the line, but in this one particularly, there was just like the use of guns, and Ernest gets like beaten up at one point, and like his face is all bloodied. And I don't know, I consider Ernest to be like a very movies for like young children, I would say, like, you know, under the age of 13 even, perhaps. So I don't know, it's just kind of weirdly violent themes at some points in most of the Ernest movies. The ending is kind of badass for an Ernest movie. Long story short, Ernest follows this ancient Indian ritual that proves his spirit is true, and he becomes invulnerable to bullets. The big bad businessman is basically just like shoots him 3 times, and every single bullet misses.
If he had courage, true courage, the rock would not break him.
It's very strange, but also like, yeah, okay, why not? Like, just make Ernest this just indestructible human being, I guess. Why not? At the time of watching, I wrote that the movie is not that good, but watchable. In hindsight, though, it ended up being my least favorite Ernest movie. So, because the thing is, at the start of watching all these films, I was a lot more interested in watching the Ernest movies than by the time I got to the end. When you watch 9 Ernest movies, it really drains you. So I think I was very naive at the start. But given hindsight, I think this is the worst Ernest movie, simply because they don't really know what to do with the character yet. It's just very disconnected and strange. Like, there's side characters that are just terribly written and aren't funny, and the Ernest gags are very safe. There's not much I can think of that like is a highlight for this movie, really, that it does better than the other Ernest movies. So yeah, this was my least favorite. I would not recommend watching this one, honestly. Moving on to the second Ernest movie, Ernest Saves Christmas, 1988. Unlike the first one, which was my least favorite, Ernest Saves Christmas ended up being my most favorite out of all of them. It was immediately way better than the first one. They definitely fixed a lot of the things that didn't work in the original, and improved on them vastly with this movie. The premise is basically Ernest meets the real Santa Claus, and the lore of Santa Claus is that it's not a person, but it's like a job that gets passed on. So the current Santa Claus is looking to find someone to replace his job as Santa Claus. So Ernest is tasked with helping Santa Claus find this guy, and at the same time, he also meets this troubled girl called Pamela, and she is the I don't believe in Santa girl, you know, who eventually goes on to believe in Santa at the end of the movie. Santa Claus eventually finds the guy that he's looking for, the guy becomes Santa Claus, and everything turns out happy. Pamela starts believing in Santa Claus, and yeah, it's all very happy. This movie was noticeably funnier than the last one. I definitely laughed a lot more. Again, not like none of the movies have like the defining pillars of comedy, but this was just like a big step up from the first one. Like, it was just a lot funnier. I think something that Ernest Saves Christmas does that the other movies didn't, it kind of has, I don't know if it's just like has a free advantage because it's a Christmas movie, so they can do like the Christmas spirit, you know. But I just feel like this one had some heart to it, like some emotional moments and scenes that none of the other ones did, really. You know, it's just like the standard like Christmas stuff you'd expect, where it's like, come on, it's Christmas, you gotta be nice and give me money and things like that, you know. But it's just done pretty well here, like with the Pamela character. She steals Santa's sack at one point, and then basically she, over the course of the movie, eventually starts to believe in Santa and then returns Santa's sack. So that's like her character development. In terms of the formula they use for the Ernest movies, they start giving Ernest disguises in this movie, which is like probably one of the key parts in terms of the Ernest humor. Like some of the funniest Ernest moments are like the disguises that he puts on. So those start showing up in this movie. Particularly the like mother disguise, which is so funny. Probably the best one.
Where is he? Where is Martin? I need him to help me with my will. Having walked from the airport, I'll be dead soon.
I don't know what to do. He's with a client.
That's life for you. You have 2 sons, one good, one bad. And wouldn't you know it, with my luck, the good one dies.
And that shows up in like most of the movies after this one. So this was the origin of the Ernest disguises, which was a great addition to all the movies. The only big negative for me were the 2 side characters. They show up in most of the movies. The people playing them change over time, but there's pretty much always like these 2 side characters. And yeah, depending on the movie, they either are put in a good role or a bad one. This one, they just weren't that funny at all, and just also very disconnected from what's happening. So yeah, they were not that funny this time around. In other movies they are, but just not this one. So yeah, as I said, Ernest Saves Christmas easily. Oh, I don't even know if easily, but it was my favorite Ernest movie, so I do recommend watching this one. Next up we have Ernest Goes to Jail, 1990. The title pretty much says it all for all of these. I mean, every single Ernest movie, the title pretty much says it all. Ernest works at a bank, and through a mishap he gets switched with someone in prison who looks exactly like him. So the premise is Ernest is stuck in jail, you know? So that's the big gimmick for this movie, but I think something that's kind of overlooked is that there's actually way more, for me at least, there's way more comedic stuff that comes from Ernest's lookalike, who's called Nash, living Ernest's life in the real world. So while Ernest is stuck in prison, Nash is out there living Ernest's life at the bank, and there's just like a lot of funny stuff that comes from that, really. So yeah, I think it's a good premise in terms of like generating potential gags and humor and stuff, as far as Ernest movies go. We also have more of Ernest's life explored in this one. We get to see his house, which gave me big like Pee-wee's Playhouse vibes in terms of just like there's just like crazy contraptions everywhere. I think that's kind of just like a theme with all kids entertainers, like kids characters. They're all just like their houses, they're just these like most insane wacky things with all these contraptions everywhere that do stuff. So yeah, that's what Ernest's house is like. The 2 side characters have a way better role here. They play like these security guards at the bank, and they're constantly like showing the bank owner all these new security devices. They're just a lot funnier than they were in the previous 2 movies. So they did a good job with that one. Again, there's more of the violent themes here. Maybe in this one the most. In this one, Ernest goes on death row and is faced with execution and nearly is killed. They like have him in the electric chair and they like turn on the electricity, but instead of killing him, it gives him like electrical superpowers, which is like a recurring thing throughout this movie. He just like becomes he essentially becomes Magneto. I don't know if it's just me, but like it's just weird that like Ernest is like faced with execution, and it's just like a children's movie. I don't know. It just struck me as strange. Another crazy ending with this one. Kind of as it goes on, actually, most of the Ernest movies have really wacky endings. But this one particularly, he becomes polarized. That's how it's described. He becomes polarized from being electrocuted, and so he essentially gets zero gravity powers, and so he's just flying around the bank trying to defeat Nash, who is trying to rob the bank. It's very bizarre, but it is entertaining as hell because it's just like a solid 5 to 10 minutes of just like Ernest like flying around with superpowers fighting his lookalike. It's just entertaining to watch. Like I don't know, it's obviously, yeah, it's fun. That's all that matters really with these Ernest movies. It's fun and entertaining to watch. So yeah, this was better than Ernest Goes to Camp easily, but Ernest Saves Christmas, still the superior Ernest movie. This one ended up being my second favorite, and I do recommend watching this one. So yeah, Ernest Goes to Jail. Moving on to the fourth movie, Ernest Scared Stupid, the Halloween one. So in this one, Ernest is a garbage truck driver and is tasked with defeating an ancient evil troll that needs to consume the souls of 5 children to become all-powerful and unleash a troll army upon the world. So I don't know where they get these premises from, man, but whatever. This one wasn't that good. It's passable, but there's just not that much humor in it. The side characters are bad and just not entertaining. There were 2 standout highlights for me. The first being Ernest's split personality scenes, because it basically just lets him do impressions of other characters and stuff, which is fun and entertaining to watch.
What we need is the high ground. The high ground is no good without trees. Friends, Romans, Botswanians, lend me your tree. There ain't no trees in Botswana. I know. I am a Botswanian lumberjack, and I ain't never had a job.
And the second was the troll special effects, which were actually really good for an Ernest movie. Like it was just a cool looking troll. And especially at the end of the movie when the troll army arrives, there's just like way more of them. So yeah, I was impressed by the one like interesting looking troll. I was like, oh, this looks cool, like detailed and stuff. There was a lot of like, had a very animated face, and then at the end there's like even more of them. So I was like, oh, this is pretty neat, you know. But yeah, the kid side characters are very young. They're not fleshed out as much as Pamela was from Ernest Saves Christmas, and yeah, they're just. In the end, the troll is defeated by milk. I don't know why, but yeah, Ernest reads in like an ancient book that the troll's weakness is milk for some reason. The 2 side characters go back to not having that important of a role again, and they're not that funny, so that's kind of sad. And his dog, Rimshot, is introduced in this movie. But this is the only movie that has the dog in it, so yeah, the dog is introduced and then you never see him again in any of the other movies. Fair enough, I guess. Like, it's just annoying to like have a dog for every movie, but yeah, I thought it was going to be something that would stick around in the rest of the movies, but yeah, it just never shows up again after this one. So yeah, there's really nothing that good about this. It's just literally one funny scene with the split personality and then the troll special effects, but that's just because I was like digging for something to get out of this one. So yeah, this was my second least favorite. I don't recommend watching this one at all. Moving on to Ernest Rides Again, 1993. This one was a breath of fresh air, personally. This one was nice. So the premise of this one is Ernest has a professor friend called Dr. Abner Mellon. I'm not sure if... No, it's not a play on words. It's just a funny sounding name. So his friend, Dr. Abner Mellon, has a theory about a lost cannon that essentially contains the crown jewels of England, thus rendering the existing ones to be fake. So with Ernest's help, they discover the lost cannon and they recover the jewels, all while fending off a villainous rival professor who also is after the jewels. Most of the Ernest movies have their own theme song, based on, whatever the movie is about. And this one is the best Ernest theme song by far. It was so catchy. I was like singing this in my head the whole day after I saw this movie. It's great. There are some other good Ernest theme songs, but none of them come close to this one. This is like the definitive Ernest theme song for me. It's so good, dude. Ernest's chemistry with Dr. Melon is really good. It's he essentially plays like the straight man, and Ernest is the goofy guy that's like all wacky and keeps like messing things up. But at the end of the day, he does help out Dr. Melon. I just feel so silly saying that name. He ends up helping Dr. Melon at the end of the day, and he means well. So like they're still like firm friends. There's honestly just a lot of like good stuff going on in this one. I feel like this should be the formula for what the other Ernest movies should take from. It's got good side characters, funny jokes. I would say this is probably one of the weaker premises, but it doesn't even really matter just because everything else is so solid in comparison to the other Ernest movies. Although after watching this one, I had started noticing that the movies, for the most part, all of them kind of have like abrupt endings. Like they feel like TV show endings rather than movie endings. It needs just like maybe 5 or 10 more minutes just to like close things out, but it never really does. It always ends still in like a little bit of action or just after things have finished. So yeah, I think most of the Ernest movies across the board just need to be a little bit longer. This one was my third favorite. I do recommend this one. This one, I think, especially compared to the later ones, like it doesn't have the best premise, but just everything else about it is so solid and refreshing. I just enjoyed it as like an actual movie. So yeah, this one is worth watching. Next we have Ernest Goes to School. This was the one that I watched as a kid. So the premise for this one is that Ernest is a janitor at a school, and the school is going to be shut down if all of the staff don't have their high school graduate certificate, which Ernest doesn't have, so he has to go back to school to get it. At the start, he is like failing miserably, but through these two scientist characters, the two side characters, they create this device that essentially makes Ernest super smart. So yeah, he uses that device and destroys completely. He's doing great, but then the helmet breaks and Ernest has to use his real smarts to save the day. And that's about it. Yeah, there is a lot of creative stuff in this one that I liked, particularly with use of lighting. Two scenes that come to mind are like the cowboy scene and the wrestling scene in particular.
Coach Carson, you ready?
It just adds like a little bit of flair and style onto it that just like makes it feel like they put in some level of effort into, coming up with this movie in particular. Like most of the later Ernest movies, the trend starts with this one, I think, but there's a lot of good gags at the start, but eventually like kind of falls off as it has to like focus on its plot, I guess, just to like force things along. It just ends up like not being really that funny. Most of the humor is like at the start. A big problem I had with this one, and by extension, most of the Ernest movies is that they're just missing that bit of heart that Ernest Saves Christmas did, because I think this one could have been really, really good. This one was good, but it could have been a lot better. It had these side characters that just don't get any screen time. And this is a recurring thing with the other movies, where it could really just elevate it to the next level. Like, the example for this one is that there's this high school romance plot that's set up and established, and it's just never addressed again. It's just shoved to the side to make more room for scenes of Ernest being goofy. I think it would just make us care a lot more if there were other characters and any amount of character development, really. Like, I think most of the movies that I liked the most, like Ernest Rides Again, Ernest Saves Christmas, it just has good side characters that are given like ample screen time to do things and develop as characters, you know? The ending of this movie is just like a cop-out as well. Like, it just cheats. The whole like premise of the, you know, it's meant to be the moral that it's like, oh, he doesn't really need the helmet. He had it within him all along. But he just uses the helmet at the end anyway. Once it's fixed, they fix the helmet, and so then he just wears it again. So it just negates the entire point of what they were trying to go for in the first place. So yeah, that was kind of frustrating. So yeah, this one was good, but it had so much opportunity to be a lot better that it just didn't take, which was kind of disappointing. But it is still good. I gave this, this was my fourth favorite. So yeah, just barely above the line. I do recommend this one, but yeah, it just could have done a lot more, and it didn't. So sad. Nearing the end, this is the direct to DVD or VHS, direct to video era of Ernest movies. So these last three did not get a cinematic. I can't believe I'm calling these movies cinematic. They did not get a cinematic release, sadly. Slam dunk Ernest. Ernest is a janitor at a shopping center, and he wants to join a basketball team that the rest of his janitor friends are on. He is obviously terrible at basketball, and this is the exact same premise as the last movie, because he's bad at basketball. He finds a pair of shoes that make him good at basketball. He gets corrupted by the shoes, then it turns out he didn't need the shoes all along. So yeah, it's just the exact same as the last one. Though actually, thinking about it now, I will give credit that with this one, it didn't backtrack and suddenly like give him the shoes again. Like, with Ernest Goes to School, he put the helmet back on at the end of the movie anyway, which negated the whole point. But at least with Slam Dunk Ernest, they realized, okay, let's not give him the shoes at the end after he's realized that he doesn't need the shoes. So that was a improvement in the most marginal way possible. It's a passable movie, I guess. The main humor for me for this movie came from the powers that Ernest obtains from the shoes, because they are not just like normal, like good shoes. They literally just give him superpowers. So he's like flying across the court. Every montage of that is hilarious, where he is just like all powerful. He just flies across the court and can do anything, really. So yeah, all of those scenes are really funny to watch. Those are probably the funniest scenes of the movie. The villain in this one is very strange, and it's not properly explained, really. As far as I can gather, the villain is this like god or deity that makes a wager with another god over whether or not Ernest will be corrupted by the shoes. So the villain is like doing everything in his power to like make Ernest evil from the shoes, and like, you know, make him like greedy and want money and fame and everything.
Money and me. and more money, and me, and more money, and me.
Listen to her. Stay out of this.
Ernest, you can have anything you want.
Yes, Mr. Wall. Anything.
But at the end of the day, Ernest obviously doesn't do that. And yeah, that's the best I can gather from it, because it was just super rushed, explained in the last like 5 minutes of the movie in a super short conversation between the two gods. Like, who the hell came up for this for an Ernest movie? I don't know, but yeah, that's the most I could piece together. I don't recommend this one, but only barely. It's like if you're really desperate for an Ernest movie, this one is probably, it's the best bad Ernest movie, I would say. 'Cause, yeah, it's my 5th favorite, like right in the middle. Yeah, I just barely don't recommend it. But there's some good things, and it did some things better than Ernest Goes to School, so it's okay. It's alright. But yeah, just slightly a not recommended movie. Second last movie, Ernest Goes to Africa, 1997. It's in the title. It's always in the title. Ernest accidentally steals these jewels that are owned by some indigenous Africans, and there are villains that are after the jewels who want it for themselves. So Ernest is shipped off to Africa, and he is on the run from these evil villains that want the jewels. He did blackface in this movie. I was hoping it wouldn't happen, but it did. As soon as I saw the title, I was just like, oh, please, no, please, no, please don't, no, yeah, he's doing it, god damn it. I knew it was just like a matter of time. As soon as the movie started, I was like, yeah, they're gonna do that, so, yeah, it is what it is, but, ugh. I don't think they're running out of ideas for good gags, because there are still some in the Ernest movies at this point. The only problem is that the core storytelling is not that well thought out, and at the same time, there's just not enough decent jokes to justify making an entire movie. There are 2 different villain factions that are both after the jewels, but it's never properly explained which is which. So it's just this mad scramble that like everyone is after the jewels, and it's like, okay, I hope Ernest gets them, and I don't know which villains are which, but I don't want him to get the jewels. That's like the most you can deduce from the movie. And the ending is abrupt as usual. Like Ernest just teleports back to America once he's done in Africa. Doesn't literally teleport. I wouldn't be surprised at this point. There's so much wacky stuff that happens in these movies, but it's just like, you know, it's just very abrupt, the ending. Like, just give it 5-10 minutes to properly end things, but they never do. I don't recommend this one. This was my 3rd least favorite. Yeah, this is on the tail end of the Ernest movie. It's just like, they're certainly not running out of ideas. It's just that they need to think them through more, and they're not. So, yeah, don't recommend this one. The last Ernest movie ever, Ernest in the Army, 1998. Ernest enlists to the... This is kind of funny, actually, just the premise. Because at this point, it's like they're aware that like every movie is obviously just a gimmick to put Ernest in a situation. In this one, Ernest enlists in the army so he can drive big rigs. Like, he just wants to drive the big cars that the army drives, and that's all it takes for him to sign up for the army. His best friend, who is just introduced in this movie, like his best friend Ben, which we'd never seen in any of the other 8 movies, shows up, and he's like, yeah, we get to drive big rigs in the army, and Ernest is like, oh, I want to drive big rigs.
What kind of idiot was driving that truck? You want me to drive?
No, I'm fine. I'm okay.
So he enlists to the army so he can drive big rigs, but instead culminates in him getting deployed to the Middle East. and neutralizing a plutonium missile. Oh my god. Yeah, and at this point I was done with the Ernest movies. Like it sounds so funny when I say it, just like reading it like in a sentence, but it's just like you have to realize that this is like over the course of 80 minutes and really not that much happens other than what I just said. Like, again, same with Ernest Goes to Africa. There's like a few good moments here and there, but for the most part, the movie is just boring. And that's just the fact for like most of the later Ernest movies. Like there's good moments that they thought of that probably are what made them go with the movie in the first place, but then they just never thought of anything else to fill it out. So there's like 20 to 30 minutes of funny content and then 50 to 60 minutes of just boring nothingness, half-assed attempted jokes that don't work, and moving along the exposition which we hardly care about at any point. So yeah, by this point I was done with the Ernest movies. Like I was so over them. In hindsight, I don't really know how good I expected them to be, but like, considering there's 9 Ernest movies, you got to know that some of them are not going to be good. I don't recommend this one. This was my 4th least favorite. I don't know. I got them all. I got them on a list here, and you can see them. I don't recommend this one. Don't watch it. Bad. So, with our definitive list in order, we have 4 Ernest movies that are worth watching, 5 that aren't worth watching. There's definitely too many Ernest movies. Okay, I don't even know if I want to say they shouldn't have made this many Ernest movies. They should have just taken longer making them. They made 9 Ernest movies in 11 years, so the turnover time is just so fast. If they had just slowed down, get some like more script writers, just get some better jokes, just spend more time on these movies, and honestly I think all of them could be good. It's a miracle that 4 of them are even worth watching, considering that they made 9 in 11 years. Like, it's a miracle that 4 of these are good, and I genuinely think you should watch them, that they're worth watching, that I recommend them. I mean, yeah, just that by itself is impressive, honestly. None of them really nailed what Ernest Saves Christmas did. Some came close, particularly Ernest Goes to Jail and Ernest Rides Again. I wouldn't really say Ernest Goes to School did it, because Ernest Goes to School didn't really have any decent, properly thought out side characters. It has side characters, but just not that good. But Ernest Goes to Jail and Ernest Rides Again both had good side characters. I think the edge that Ernest Saves Christmas had was just like a little bit of heart and spirit that, makes you emotionally invested in what's going on. So yeah, again, it's kind of cheating because it has the Christmas angle, so it's just got that free, it's Christmas. Come on, where's your Christmas spirit? But I think that can be replicated in other movies. Like, it doesn't need to be Christmas to make me, like, care about the characters, So yeah, as I said, there's some good jokes in all of them, but most of the movies don't warrant an entire movie. There's good scenes, there's funny moments, but there's not 90 minutes of funny moments. There's very short amount of funny moments, and it's just not enough to make most of them worth watching. So yeah, that is my thoughts on the Ernest verse. In hindsight, I don't even know if I'm glad that I watched all of these, to be honest with you. By the end, I was getting so exhausted of these movies. But I am glad that I at least saw Ernest Saves Christmas. That was a good one. I don't usually like Christmas movies either, but this might be a yearly annual watch for me, because I really liked Ernest Saves Christmas. So if you've never seen any of the Ernest movies, I would recommend some of them, again, the ones in the list, but you don't need to see every Ernest movie. by no stretch of the imagination do you need to see every Ernest movie. It's not worth it. I mean, hey, if you're a die-hard Ernest fan, you gotta do what you gotta do. I wish I was a die-hard Ernest fan, because maybe I would have enjoyed them more, but yeah, I think maybe that's why I watched them all. I wanted to be a die-hard Ernest fan. I like Ernest. He's funny. He's a funny guy. Jim Varney is great. His impersonations are hilarious. It's a miracle how much he gets out of one character, like 9 movies in, and it's like I still even find anything funny. He's impressive. I think he's very, very underrated. Like, yeah, he was a talented dude. Just needed a bit more effort put into the movies. Slow down the production of them. Just spend more time thinking about them, and planning it all out. And yeah, but as I said, 4 ones I recommend: Ernest Saves Christmas, Ernest Goes to Jail, Ernest Rides Again, and Ernest Goes to School. I would say that is the place to start if you're interested in any of the Ernest movies. But yeah, let me know which Ernest movies you've seen, if you've seen any at all, and if you like them or not. Probably like only Americans again are gonna have seen any of these, because it's slightly niche, I guess. I mean, like, I don't think I ever would have heard of Ernest in my life if it wasn't for my dad, who showed me one of them when I was a kid. Yeah, I think it's just an American thing for the most part. I'm fairly sure it's not that big in other countries, but let me know if you've stumbled upon this, what your thoughts are on the Ernest movies of all things. Christ almighty. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching, and I will see you in the next video.
Even as a lad, he was sensitive and caring.